This is the Blood Red Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
It's the Blood Red Podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along. Gareth Southgate comes to his senses late in the day to hand Trent a Euro 2020 call-up alongside Red skipper Jordan Henderson. Coming up, we'll be discussing the selection, why there was any debate anyway, and the experiment Southgate could be set to play with Clarke keeping a keen eye. Here to get into all of that, we have our Liverpool correspondent Paul Gorst and our Blood Red writer Matt Addison. Gorsty, come to you straight up, and I suppose the whole thing about this Trent Alexander-Arnold debate and it being the headline news of him making the England 26-man squad for the Euros is the fact he was dropped for March when, quite frankly, he didn't need to be anyway.
No, he didn't. I mean, he did suffer a dip in form. I don't think many people will kind of argue that one, but there's certainly a context to it. The fact that Jurgen Klopp was forced to name 20, I mean, I think it needs repeating, doesn't it? 2-0 when you think about it, 2-0 different centre-back partnerships this season. You know, it's incredible that they were even able to get near that number, you know, when you think of how limited Liverpool have, you know, the numbers-wise. You know, Jordan Henderson's been playing in there, Fabinho's been playing in there for most of the season. It's incredible. But yeah, I mean, I think any fullback in the world would suffer a dip in form when they constantly being asked to play with different defenders, different players who they're not used to playing with week in, week out. And also with the fact that there was no kind of adjustments made for that by Klopp. It was very much just, you know, Nat Phillips and Reece Williams are playing now instead of Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez. But my fullbacks are still playing exactly how I want them, and they're going to be cracking on as normal. And I think that has played a part in it as well. So there was a dip in form. But it was understandable. It was very explainable. And since he was left out of that March round of international fixtures, he's been like a man possessed, hasn't he? I don't know whether that's just coincidence or whether it's a case of he's really grasped the nettle for Liverpool in the last few months and he really wants to drag them over the line, or that's just been playing on his mind a little bit that you know, he's got a point to prove for the international team as well. So yeah, I'm glad that sense has prevailed, or some sense has prevailed, because not only is Trent Alexander-Arnold in there, but there's 3 other right backs, which is incredible, really. My worry is Southgate's picking Alexander-Arnold, and he kind of hinted at it himself recently that he might be picking him as a midfielder, which I just think would just be incredible. He's played there once professionally in a 1-0 defeat to Chelsea back in 2018. Before Liverpool got beaten in the Champions League final to Real Madrid. So if Southgate's picking him there with the intention of playing him as a central midfielder, it just baffles me. And I think another thing as well is there's going to be a little bit of almost like an English school of thought, if you like, which, well, he's a right back, so he can't really be influencing the game that much. We're going to have to put him in midfield. All he's got to do is look at what he's done for Liverpool for the last 3 years and realise that fullbacks now is probably the most important position, isn't it? After your number 9, you don't even need the number 9 actually to a certain extent. Chelsea have just won the Champions League there with a top scorer as a defensive midfielder who basically stuck all his penalties away. So the game's changing, and I just think that if Alexander-Arnold's been picked to go in midfield there just because he's good on the ball, I just think it's a completely baffling train of thought. But if he's in there to be a first choice right back, then some sense has prevailed.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get into talking a bit about the midfield thing, because as you say, he did kind of allude to it when the provisional squad was named, did Gareth Southgate. But Matt, what's your reaction, and how much do you think that determination that Gorsty was mentioning and referencing before, that point that Trent wanted to prove? I mean, we forget last year he was the PFA Young Player of the Year. He's been involved in a Champions League winning squad and a Premier League winning squad in the last 2 full seasons prior to this one that's just been completed as well. If you're going to a major tournament and your aim is to try and win it, surely you want winners there with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of a variety of reasons that it was absolutely ludicrous that there was even a decision to be made, to be honest. It should have been fairly obvious that Trent was going to be in the squad because, as you say, he's been there, he's won it, he's proven it for Liverpool, he's proven himself defensively, despite what people continue to sort of suggest that he's not as good defensively as one or two of the other players on that list. I think, sense has ultimately prevailed. And I know a lot of Liverpool fans won't be particularly bothered either way. I'm sure there's a train of thought to say that if he'd have not been picked and had that been the case, he would have then had a full summer off and things like that. But I think for the player as an individual, I think he would have been gutted not to have been in it had that happened. And I think it's massively important, I think, in terms of his confidence. As you say, it clearly hurt him that he wasn't in the squad in March, that there was kind of, a possibility that he might not be going to the Euros because, there's not too many Euros in a player's career. Obviously, he's still young. There could still be 2 or 3 left for him in his career, but you want to make the most of each opportunity. And I think it would have been, a big thing for him to get into that squad. And as I say, I think his form has deserved it over the last few weeks. I think probably being left out of the England squad and having that jeopardy probably contributed to it a little bit in terms of just stepping up that level. Obviously, he would have wanted to have done that anyway to improve his form, to get Liverpool into the top 4 or top 3, as it were, in the end. But yeah, I just think for him personally, it would have been a massive thing. And as much as Liverpool fans aren't always necessarily too bothered about England, I think for the player himself to go to a tournament, to represent your country, all that comes with that, I think this is a big, big thing for him. The question now is just, does he get on the pitch? Does he start? Is he the first choice? Obviously, you'd like that to be the case. And I think for me, it's no question that he is the best one. Even if they've picked 4, for me, Trent is the pick of the bunch there.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of what I was thinking. If you were to pick a dream team, Gorsty, anyway, of players from all around the world, Trent would have a very good shout at being the best right back, let alone the best English one. But there'll be a number of people watching and listening in, as Matt sort of alluded to there, on Merseyside. The feeling towards the national team isn't great. So I think a few people will be thinking, well, actually, if he hadn't have been picked, it would have done Liverpool a bit of a favour to let him have a break over the course of the summer, really recharge his batteries and come back firing for next season.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we're breaking any confidence there. Are we saying that Liverpool supporters in the area are not always the most keen on the 3 lines, are they? And that's fair enough. It's something that I probably share myself, to be perfectly honest, Guy. But yeah, I mean, it would have been seen as Matt says, you would be disappointed for the player himself because he'd want to go there with England, and that his form probably deserves it, and the calibre of player he is, he certainly deserves to be one of England's top 23 players. But there would have been certainly some supporters who would have been clenching the fist at seeing Trent omitted from the squad, thinking get a good rest behind them, good 6 weeks off, reported training on the 12th of July with the rest of the Liverpool team, and get a good pre-season under your belt ahead of a crack at the title next season. Turns out that that's not going to be the case, so we'll see what happens with the Euros this summer. But it's interesting to name the squad numbers, isn't it? I don't know if we're going to touch on that in a bit more detail, but Trent is number 22, and Kyle Walker is the one who's got the number 2 shared. So does that suggest that Trent's going to be a backup to Kyle Walker? Reece James number 24 and Trippier is 12. So does that mean he's third choice? I'm not too sure how these things work with international numbers anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's I'll be looking forward to seeing him hopefully starting a couple of games for England this summer and seeing how he gets on. Just keeping my fingers crossed he avoids a hamstring or a calf injury or just any kind of injury, because Liverpool have had rotten luck with injuries to defenders this season. So let's hope it doesn't go beyond this season.
Yeah, we know, obviously, to Liverpool, Trent's far more than just a right-back and a defender. It begs the question, though, Matt, is Trent going to play much, do we think? Matt, I think you're on mute there, mate.
Forgot to unmute myself there. I would suggest not, is what I was saying. Is the fact that there was a question mark over him, the fact that he wasn't in the squad in March. I think if Southgate was going into this summer with him as first choice, I mean, no matter what his form was in March, he would have probably been there, because it wouldn't really make too much sense to take him out and then bring him back in. But obviously he's done that. That's what he's done, and I would suggest that he's probably not first choice. As I say, it would not be the case that would be in my sort of order of preferences. I mean, if he is third choice, and if we look at the squad numbers and take that as first, second, and third being Walker, Trippier, and then Trent, I mean, you can certainly make the case that Walker and Trippier have had good seasons. I can't say I've watched a whole huge amount of Trippier in Spain this season, but by all accounts has had a good season. Kyle Walker, I think, has been very good, but But so was Trent. I mean, the sort of demise of him over those few weeks was massively exaggerated. And I think one thing we can say definitively is that Trent Alexander-Arnold at his best is better than the other three at their best. So you have to assume that, going into these tournaments, that's something that Gareth Southgate has looked at and has seen and has analysed with as many matches as possible. But I just think if you're England and you need a goal, and we have seen, I think that it's fair to say there's more creativity in the side this time than there has been in previous England teams at major tournaments. But I just think if you've got someone as good as Trent, particularly when you look at his crossing and things like that, you think of Kane, Dominic Calvert-Lewin could come off the bench. If you've got players like that, you want somebody who can just pinpoint a ball, put it into the perfect area, and he can win you a game. And that I think is something that he has certainly over the other three in that position. So for me, it's obvious that he should be England's number one choice. I think you wouldn't necessarily play him in every single game. There might be one or two games where you decide that there's a better option, but I think certainly going into it on paper, for me, Trent is definitely number one.
Yeah, our job, of course, is to effectively care for the Liverpool players and look out and watch them. I don't normally sort of wade in with my opinion, but I'm going to break rank here, Gorst, and just sort of say regarding Trent, I think if he's not the first choice starting right back, I just don't get it, because in terms of such a dominant Premier League win last season, behind maybe only Virgil van Dijk and Mohamed Salah, he was Liverpool's most important player. Perhaps he's 22-year-old lad. Kyle Walker's 31, was dropped from England for a fair while of time, and yes, he may well have won the title with Man City this season. But Trent he's reinvented that role, and surely, if Gareth Southgate does overlook him, he's got him now in his 26-man squad. But if he overlooks him for starting him, I'll be beside myself. But before we talk a bit more about Trent, Gorsty, let's talk about Jordan Henderson. He's also in there. He's not played since February. Point I asked you before about Trent maybe not having gone and fans being happy with that because they know he won't get injured. Surely there's got to be a concern, that same concern for Liverpool fans over Jordan Henderson.
Yeah, I think so. It's another difficult one, isn't it? A player who Liverpool fans will be delighted to see kind of doing what he would have wanted to go to these Euros and, be the vice captain to Harry Kane and do what he does best, get on the pitch and cajole this England squad. And I think with his leadership qualities in that young and exciting squad, I think it's, quite exciting for England fans. It's a really good squad from an attacking point of view. There's so much talent in there. And I think if it all clicks, England could shock one or two. It's just, my issue is the conservative nature of the manager and typical kind of dowdy English, I don't know really. I mean, reluctant to be too critical of Gareth Southgate, but he's not someone who would inspire me if I was a player, particularly an attacking player. He doesn't seem to let anyone off the leash, does he? And go for it. But having Henderson in there could really be a big kind of fill up for the rest of this squad. The issue is, as we say, he hasn't played since February, since he limped out of that Merseyside derby. It's a long time, really, isn't it? We're into June now, and he hasn't played since February. England's next competitive game is, not even sure when it is, the 14th, is it? Something like that. So that'll be a long time that he will have gone without playing competitive football. So it's difficult to expect him to hit the ground running and come flying out the traps in the way he does, it's a trademark effect at Liverpool. So, that's a bit of a worrying one that he could easily suffer a kind of another setback. And he hasn't got great history with injuries anyway. He was injured for the last 4 or 5 games of last season. He had a heel injury a few years ago that bothered him for quite some time. And I think if you look across his injury history, it's quite checkered as well. So that'll be a little bit of a concern with pre-season on the horizon, and then obviously the Premier League, new Premier League season in 2.5 months' time.
Yeah, no, definitely. In terms of England's first game, it is Sunday the 13th, so just over 10 days or so until that first game. Have to wait and see if Jordan Henderson is in it. But Matt, what's your feeling, given he was on the bench obviously for the final game of the season against Crystal Palace, but Jurgen Klopp was asked a number of times in the weeks leading to the end of the season, would Henderson be fit for the European Championships? And he was very non-committal on it. Don't know quite how happy he'll be with him going away.
I think the fact that Henderson was on the bench for the final game of the season pretty much confirmed to me that he was going to go to the Euros. I think that was kind of the message, wasn't it? I don't think they really had too many intentions of bringing him on for any great deal of time, but that kind of felt like a signal to me at the time that he was going to go. And it is a bit of a concern. I think Jordan Henderson is a hugely influential player for England. If you look at the options they have in the centre of midfield, he's certainly one of the first names on the team sheet in that position. I think Calvin Phillips has had a good season, but can he do the job as well as Jordan Henderson? Certainly not. Declan Rice, again, I'm still not 100% convinced on him. I think he's had a decent season. He's a good player, but again, I think he's got his limitations. And so I think you can sort of see from Gareth Southgate's perspective, you really do want to get Jordan Henderson, even if he's only 75, 80% fit. I think they'd want to put him out there. And similar to Trent, really, I'm sure from Henderson's perspective, again, it might be one of the last times he gets this opportunity to go to a major tournament with England. So again, he'd want to take that and make the most of it. So it's not a massive shock. It is a slight concern, I think, in terms of rushing him back. Obviously, after you've not played for so long, to suddenly go into a tournament where you're playing, probably, what will it be, 3 games in the space of 8 days or something like that. I think England have just got to be really sensible with him, manage him as much as possible. They do have 1 or 2 other options in there. They should be able to get through the group that they've got without over-exerting with Jordan Henderson. And hopefully he can just get through that. And hopefully there's no sort of repercussions, because, as Gorst said, we've seen it in the past. He's not got the best injury record. And I think if there was a player there that you wouldn't want to risk, probably Jordan Henderson would be that man.
Yeah, England should be careful with him. They looked after Joe Gomez well. No, I'm only pulling the leg there on that one. Right, let's get into it. Gorsty, Trent in midfield. Discuss.
Absolutely not. No. As I say, he's played there once in his professional career. So if you think, this lad's good on the ball, let's go and stick him in midfield in a position he's never played. It's baffling, and I think that kind of speaks to a lot of this kind of antiquated thinking in English football, that you can't be a massive influence because you're a fullback. Liverpool, more than any club, have kind of disproven that theory, haven't they, over the last 3 years with Andy Robertson and Trent himself. 12 assists one season, 13 the following season, the PFA Young Player of the Year, Premier League winner, Champions League winner, member of the best back 5 in the Premier League for the last 2 full seasons prior to this one. Why on earth would you want to stick him anywhere else? He's a world-class right back. For me, he's better than the other 7 or 8 that are in that squad of them. He has to start at right back. He can't be a midfielder. That's a non-starter for me. And I think the midfield options there are pretty decent enough anyway. Particularly Jude Bellingham. I'm looking forward to watching him this summer. What I've seen of him at Dortmund, he looks like he's going to be a phenomenal player for the next 15 years easily. Mason Mount as well. Calvin Phillips had a good season with Leeds. And obviously Jordan Henderson, who is the captain without the armband in this England squad, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. Matt, what's your take on it? I mean, look at Trent's numbers, 44 assists in 179 games for Liverpool. Strikes me, like Gorsty says, you play him at right back, he'll create from there anyway. Yeah,
exactly that. I mean, it's just a strange sort of idea. It's almost like shoehorning a player into a position that you just don't really want. It's almost as if Southgate's wary of a backlash if he doesn't pick Trent. So he's trying to find a way of getting him in there somehow. I think that's probably a fair thing to say. And I mean, just thinking about it then, as you put the squad list up and you look at the other midfielders, I mean, the only position really that you could see Trent being needed in is maybe as a number 8, possibly in a 4-3-3. But if you were to play a 4-3-3 with him being that box-to-box player, well, you'd then want him in a back 4 as your first choice right back anyway. So I'm not quite sure how that midfield conversation comes about. I mean, if you were to play him more further forward as a number 10, well, you've got Grealish, you've got Mount, you've got Bellingham, you've got other players. Further back, you've got Henderson, you've got Rice, other players as well, Calvin Phillips. It just doesn't strike me as an obvious one to sort of put him in there. So, yeah, again, it's got to be right back or nothing for me. And just in terms of whether England play a back 3 or a 4, I think obviously a 4 suits Alexander-Arnold better. But for me, again, looking at that squad, a back four suits England much better. They don't have the best central midfield options. They do have really good forward options. I think to play a back three, not only do you lose the sort of best version of Trent at right back, but you also lose an extra attacker, and you also have to put in an extra defender, which is not England's strength. So, yeah, to me, it's a bit of a strange one. If they do persist with a back three, you can definitely see Alexander-Arnold being on the bench. But I think that in both ways, without him and without a back four, I think it's detrimental to England long term.
Yeah, it feels, picking up on the point there that Matt made about maybe fearing a backlash, Gorst, it feels as though Trent has been picked. And if this talk of him maybe being used in midfield is to be the case, well, what sort of the case study he's got to prove that he can play at international level as a midfield player? There simply isn't one. But in terms of that, our colleague Ian Doyle tweeted last night when it looked as though we thought that Trent might not make it, saying if he isn't picked, England immediately have to be installed as favourites because they're going to leave a world-class player at home, and therefore, feeding on the backlash point, it feels as though he is picked. Of course, there's 3 extra spaces than what there normally would be. Just wonder, actually, how much Trent is actually going to end up playing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think the squad numbers thing suggests that he's not going to be immediately first choice for this England squad. And then it's I can't really think of any other kind of comparison where a player plays one position for his club and is a standout player for that club, and then plays a completely different position for his nation. Maybe David Alaba had a push for Austria. He plays centre mid for Austria, I think, and he was obviously left back or centre back for Bayern Munich. He's obviously gone to Real Madrid, but I just think it'd be so counterproductive, and it wouldn't do Southgate any favours if he puts Trent in midfield and you know he doesn't immediately grasp the position, because you know he's a top player, but you know he's never played there, so that could quite easily happen, couldn't it? Particularly if they're up against a top European side, and then Trent gets caned off the back of it. Southgate gets it in the neck because people are questioning why he's done it in the first place. And for me, it's counterproductive. If he's not going to play right back, then I wouldn't play him. But as we've said a few times now, he should be the first choice right back.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not even just what he offers in open play, is it? That set piece delivery. We saw during the last World Cup England score a number of set piece goals. You need Trent on the pitch to take those as well, especially when you consider a player like James Ward-Prowse, for example, hasn't been picked. He's a set piece specialist as well. Trent would offer that to the squad.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it was it at a World Cup or a Euros where Harry Kane ended up taking them because basically England didn't think they had good enough options to take corners and stuff like that. I mean, immediately Trent Alexander-Arnold, ticks that box. I think it's just another thing that he's got. I know, obviously, Trippier scored the free kick, didn't he, in the semi-final and things like that. I mean, they're still not for me on the same level as what Trent brings to the table in terms of consistency, in terms of shooting, but in terms of crossing, set pieces, corners, that sort of thing. I mean, you can just sort of see him crossing a ball and Calvert-Lewin coming off the bench and heading one in. It feels like something that England would be sort of wrong or stupid really to not take full advantage of, because we know how good he can be, how consistent he is. And it's one of those parts of his game that even when the rest of it isn't quite clicking, you can still rely on him for a moment. And it just goes back to, again, Trent Alexander-Arnold is a match winner. And I think certainly in tournament football, you can't have enough of those on the pitch. Certainly Trent is far more of a match winner than any of the other options on the pitch in England's right back slot. So yeah, it would make a huge amount of sense, I think, to have him on the pitch. Not just for that, obviously, there's other parts of his game, but I think especially the fact that Ward-Prowse has been left out and cut from the squad, I think that is something that maybe you could sort of see Southgate thinking, well, if we've not got Ward-Prowse, at least we've got somebody else who's equally as consistent in terms of those deliveries.
Yeah, I'd put the argument out there. Trent's got the best set-piece delivery and best right-side delivery since David Beckham for England. You put the best players in their best positions, you put them out on the pitch, and you let them work it out. Anyway, that's enough chat on the England 26-man squad for the Euros. Before we go, Gorsty, let's chat about happier times. 2 years ago, on the 1st of June, number 6 was lifted in Madrid, and what an occasion it was for the Reds. It
certainly was. Wasn't lucky enough to be there. it was James Pearce's swan song, wasn't it? I think that was his last game he covered for the Echo. So we went out in style there, James.
The way to go out that, yeah.
Yeah. It's when you look at look at Liverpool winning cups, growing up and whatever else, and there's like a certain set of images, aren't there, that kind of burned in your brain, and Madrid is no different. That massive pitch at the Wanda Metropolitano, and the scenes after it with Henderson hugging his dad, and all the players basically walking up to the fans with the cup, and Klopp in that slow motion video giving them all hugs at full time, and Wijnaldum running onto the pitch celebrating the same way he did when he scored against Barcelona with like his arms by his side, and just all these memories. And I was watching them all this morning before I started my shift, and just thinking, how's that been 2 years? It's just come and gone nowhere, hasn't it? But yeah, it's incredible, and the first trophy that this team won, and we knew it wouldn't be the last, and it was a vital one to get over the line, because they just finished the Premier League season with 97 points. So unlucky not to win the Premier League title. They were 12 millimetres away from a Premier League and Champions League double. Incredible. Deserved to win the Champions League. They were better than Tottenham on the day. They come through such a tough group with Paris Saint-Germain. They beat Bayern Munich en route. They beat Barcelona. So thoroughly deserved to get to the final, and then kind of just managed it perfectly for the game itself. Early penalty, late winner from Origi, and not a whole lot in between. It was just exactly what this team deserved after the season they've given, and to be European champions was the start of this team's journey, and doesn't appear to be over yet, does it?
No, definitely not. And Matt, I suppose it was the cementing really of Liverpool getting back on their perch and being a super club cup winning side, of just continually getting those honours on the board, because there'd been a few near misses under Jurgen Klopp, and then they get the big one over the line, and as Gorst says, that was the catalyst for what we're seeing now, just a completely dominant side.
Yeah, exactly that. It just proved to themselves and to everyone else that they could do it. They could get over the line, and they were favourites going into it. I think that's fair to say, going into that game, and it's just one of those things. If they hadn't have done it, who knows what might have happened? They couldn't possibly have maybe gone on and do what they've done. But it was an amazing night. I can't believe it's been 2 years already, and you think of what's happened since then. As we've said, I mean, which one of those players maybe took the confidence as a collective? They took that confidence into the Premier League and just kicked on and went to the next level. So yeah, I think obviously last season didn't go exactly to plan, but we all know the reasons why, and hopefully next season can be something similar to what it was in 2019. Really, I don't think there's any reason to think that winning mentality, the quality of the players, the squad, that sort of thing, especially with one or two additions over the summer, they can't get to being back at those levels, and hopefully there's fans there and all of that sort of thing as well to sort of aid with that and sort of be a part of that journey again, because I think you've got to make the most of it when these sort of periods of play come, and Liverpool have obviously done that over the last 2 or 3 seasons, and I'm very hopeful that they can get back to that sort of standing next season as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Gorsty, like you were saying before, it sort of seems in a blink of an eye 2 years has gone past. But then when you look at even the side that started that game, Ian Doyle's written a brilliant piece on the Echo website today, talking about how that side that lined up in the final never started another game together for Liverpool. And of course they won't, because Wijnaldum's moved on. Mm-hmm. But slowly you realise, well, Thiago and Jota came in last summer. We know Konate is coming in this summer already as well, and slowly but surely this squad has begun to be moved on and evolved now.
It has, yeah. It's more evolution than revolution, isn't it? And that's what Liverpool need. They don't need. It was a difficult season, of course, and one or two players I've got big question marks over their future, but they don't need wholesale changes. They never really have. Klopp got asked that in March, I think, and he basically said, well, what is wholesale changes? To me, that's 7, 8, 9 players coming in and 7, 8, 9 players going out. It's never really going to be that case this summer. Wijnaldum's obviously on the move. Konate's come in. Liverpool have redressed the balance there, considering they probably should have replaced Dejan Lovren, what was it, 11 months ago, 12 months ago. So yeah, it is just kind of interesting now. The main protagonists still seem to be there, but there is this kind of replenishment of the squad in key areas at key times, and I think that's the way it will be for the duration of the Jurgen Klopp tenure. I don't think, for example, in 12 months' time, we're going to be seeing, Mane, Firmino, and Salah all leave and 3 new forwards coming in. I think it will just be slowly but surely, just looking at it every few months and seeing the team change, the makeup of the team. And next season's quite interesting, isn't it? Because we're going to get a fully fit Thiago Alcantara, who's really been flourishing in the last few weeks. We're going to have a new 40 million centre-back to choose from for Klopp at the back. And I still suspect that there's going to be an incoming in the forward line as well. So, I think just slowly but surely just kind of refreshing that team. And that is interesting from Doyley's piece that, they haven't started the game since Madrid. So I suppose that is a great legacy to have.
Yeah, most definitely. And just final point before we go, Matt, in terms of Konate, played for captain the French under-21 side, albeit they went out of the Euro under-21s last night against the Netherlands. But looks as though Liverpool have got a Colossus, another one, coming in defence.
Yeah, 6'4", I think, isn't he? And obviously very quick. All the things that we knew were the case from speaking to people and from the sort of bits that we've seen from him so far. I think we saw a little bit of a taster of that last night. I mean, obviously it wasn't the result that they would have wanted, but I suppose, again, you can sort of spin that as, well, he gets an extra few days off. It's a couple fewer games. It means that, hopefully he'll be able to come in pre-season and sort of hit the ground running with Liverpool heading into next season. So, yeah, it was not the result that France wanted, probably not the result that France deserved, to be honest. I thought they were slightly the better team, maybe let down in forward areas by Houssem Aouar, who's been linked with Liverpool and Arsenal and various other clubs at certain times. But I thought in terms of a performance where I assume he would have known that Liverpool fans would be tuning in and watching him. I think there was maybe a little bit of pressure on his shoulders to put on a performance, and I thought generally he did pretty well yesterday. Obviously, more to come. Only just turned 22, but certainly an exciting player to watch out for next season. It'd be interesting to sort of see, I think, how Jurgen Klopp beds him in. And obviously, we know that Van Dijk and Gomez are coming back from big injuries. Matip, you can't necessarily rely on. I wonder, how quickly he'll be thrown in and how quickly, he'll be playing regularly, or whether it might be a longer term process. I suppose we'll probably start to see a few hints of that as pre-season starts.
He was playing on the right side of the back two, obviously, with his former Leipzig colleague, Dayot Upamecano. So it'll be interesting to see how it does play out. But that's it from us for this edition of the Blood Red podcast. Thanks a lot for joining us. Myself, Guy Clarke, Paul Gorst and Matt Addison. Until next time, it's bye for now.